I have some special guests today. Today with me is...
Hi, I'm Teresa Haycraft.
Hi, I'm Paul Kloeckner.
Glad to meet you both, and share with the folks who you're with.
Sure, we're here today representing Fairmont Ford. It's been in our family for 4 generations.
4 generations, very cool. Tell me, what year, when you say 4 generations, what year did it start?
The business started in 1909. I believe our great-grandfather came in about 27, so lots of years, 90 years of Kloeckners running through that thing.
Absolutely. And the two of you have been involved your whole life, or how does that work?
We both washed cars there when we were younger.
That's right.
And I moved away for about 10 years and then came back.
Okay.
After working up north in electronics for 10 years.
Yep, and I was about the same. Went to college, moved away. I think I was gone for 15 years.
Awesome.
So I've been back for 5 years now.
Oh, very cool. Well, welcome back to both of you to Fairmont. Say, there was an interview done with your grandfather about the dealership, done in, I believe, 2002. Do you want to see that? Because I think he explains a little bit about how all this began.
Sure.
Let's
Love
take a
to
look.
see it.
One Fairmont auto dealership has a lot of history behind it, not only locally but on a national level. In today's history lesson, Len Tweeten brings us the story behind Park Motors.
This is Lenny Tweeden of the Martin County Historical Society's Pioneer Museum. Today's history lesson is going to be on automobiles. It's a pleasure to have Bob Kloeckner with us today from Park Motor. I'm going to ask him a few questions about both Park Motor and the history of automobiles. Bob, my first car was a 1955 Ford, and I know you've been a Ford dealer for quite some time. But let's talk about Park Motor for just a little bit. What's some of the history about Park Motor that you can tell us?
Well, we started in 1909 in Sherburne, Minnesota by a man named John Grill. Moved to Fairmont in 1914 and then moved to the Park Street location in 1920. Fire in 1952 burned everything down, and they moved to the present location of spring of 1954.
Yeah.
Okay,
so you've seen actually quite a few changes over the years. As far as the dealership is concerned, and you're working with an automobile dealership, what are some of the bigger challenges you've seen in working with the dealership over the years?
well, there's challenges, and there's new challenges, of course, every day, but the advent of electronics, the advent of the capital needed for all the equipment to service these automobiles, the training that is needed for all the technicians and all the salespeople. It's a very challenging business, and it's a business that a lot of people don't understand. They see the glory of the car, and they don't realize what goes on behind the scenes.
Okay, sure. You talked a little bit about the history of Park Motor. I understand it's one of the older dealerships in the nation. Where does it rank there?
Well, we're listed as the 4th oldest Ford dealership in the United States, and they've allowed that because the first owners were involved, and then they took in new owners, and it was kind of a continuous process, and so Ford has allowed that to stand as a continuous franchise. And we do have a continuous franchise, not just on a yearly basis.
Okay, good. Over to my left here is a Model T Ford, and quite old, of course. Automobiles have changed quite a bit over the years. From your perspective, what do you see as probably the most significant or major changes that have taken place with the actual automobile over the years?
Well, when you consider the fact that especially when we have weather like we have today with some snow on the ground, when you consider all the advances, cars operate under all sorts of weather conditions. Electronics has made a big difference. The engineering that goes in the cars is just fantastic today, and as a result we've got cars that operate below zero and cars that operate at 100 degrees, and the electronics is a big factor in that.
Okay, they've kind of got to be all over the place with automobiles anymore. What do you see for the future of cars? You know, we hear about all these new hybrids with part gasoline and part electric. operations. What do you think as far as that's concerned, what's going to happen in the future with automobiles?
Well, all the major manufacturers right now are involved with hybrids, and I think you'll see more of that. The problem is that you can't mandate gas mileage. You have to engineer it, and it takes a long time. The electric gas engines are going to be coming into play in the next few years, and I think there'll be other sources of energy in the future, but it'll take a little time.
Okay, sure. Over the years, you've been involved with automobiles, both as a dealer and were you a salesman too to begin with? Or,
Yes.
Okay. What are some of the highlights that you recall from your career? Some of the things you really enjoyed, or the things that really stick out in your mind?
That's a good question. I started in 1956. I worked in Minneapolis, and our parts manager had a second heart attack. Clarence Edlund was his name, so I came back, and it was hard to come back because my father is a German and a tough businessman, and it wasn't easy working for your father. But I went, years ago I worked on the Lubrac, the paint department, and so I started in parts, got into sales, became a sales manager, and little by little worked into being general manager, and I was able to take control of the dealership after my father passed away.
Okay, good. Okay, well, it's very interesting hearing about Park Motor and about automobiles. What was your first car that you had?
Well, mine also was a 1955 Ford. Kind of unusual when you're going to school and all of your friends know that your father's a car dealer. They think you can take a car off the lot at any time, so it didn't work that way. I never owned a car till after I was married. I worked for Archer Daniel Midland Company in Minneapolis, and that necessitated transportation. Other than that, I never had a car all through high school or college or whatever. But a lot of changes since 1955, as you can well imagine.
Very definitely. If someone wanted to get into the automobile business today, what advice would you give them? Maybe, if they wanted to, and I don't know the details on this, but say to get a franchise, whether it be Ford, GM, or whatever.
Well, first of all, they have to have the experience. A lot of places, like these franchises today, if you ask who's the franchisee, you'd say, well, McDonald's or Burger King. Mainly, you're looking at a food franchise, whatever. Well, the auto industry is probably the first franchise there is, and you don't need the money as much as you need the experience. You can always find people that will back you, but you need a lot of experience.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate having you.
I'm glad to be here.
Best of luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
This is Lenny Tweeten for Hometown Focus.
Wow, wasn't that great?
That was awesome.
It was. Tell stories just like he does.
Still tell stories like that?
He was just in this morning.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So share with the folks, he told very well about the history of the dealership and how it all began and how it's evolved up to 2002. Can you share with us what's happened since then?
In 2003, we actually did a major remodel of the showroom parts area, and that brought it up to, I'll say, modern times from when it was built.
Sure.
We also did a name change to
really?
Fairmont Ford, so we were still known as Park Motor Company, but we changed our name to Fairmont Ford after the remodel.
Is that when you changed the whole look of the front and different things? That was an incredible change to the front of that building, I thought.
Yeah, move the entrance over, move the parts department forward. It was a big change, but much needed.
Sure.
Yeah, we did that just in time for the 100-year celebration. So then we had a big celebration. Ford actually sent down a pretty big representative of Chris Hurley, still a big player in Ford at the time, came down to celebrate with us.
And what year was that?
In 2009.
Wow.
Yes.
It's already been a few years.
It has.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, and since then, I just went back and looked at the books this morning just for fun. 30 years ago, for every one new car, we sold one new truck.
Sure.
Now for every one new car, we sell 10 new trucks.
No way. That's incredible.
So it's just the whole market is changing, and we have to change with it. 30 years ago, we still had handwritten documents. Now, of course, everything is on the computer. You never used to worry about the website or your internet or the SEO or SEM, and now that seems to be all the big buzzwords. You know, you got to
Absolutely.
make sure you're.
And how many employees do you have?
We have 28 full-time employees
Wow.
and some part-time employees that also
Okay.
work for us.
Well, of those 28 full-time employees and 39 part-time, we have 500 plus years of experience, averaging about 15 years per person.
Wow.
So industry average is about 2.9 years, so we keep our people a long time. They're truly experts in their field.
Were there some people in that clip of your grandfather that are still there?
Almost all of them.
Really? That is impressive.
Yes.
Very cool.
Including Grandpa,
Yes.
still comes in. So the hair's changed a little, the cars have
The
changed
styles
a lot.
have changed some,
That's
the cars
right.
have changed.
But they are still there and still working hard.
Very
so.
cool. And what other changes have you two, since you've come on board, have you seen change? You talked about the computer and bringing all the technology in. Is there anything majorly that has changed with the cars themselves?
7-8 years ago when I started, the autonomous vehicles were just starting to get talked about.
Sure.
And now this year, Ford came out with, it's called Copilot 360, and standard across the board, they're putting in all the safety features on every new vehicle.
Really?
And so the entry model all the way up to the high-end stuff has the safety equipment to help you avoid an accident or avoid hitting someone.
So it's mandatory in all the vehicles now, is what you're saying, or is
Ford's
just
putting it
Ford?
in, just started this year, and next year it'll come across the full line of vehicles.
Awesome. Very cool.
In 5 years, you used to get a little screen in the front of your car that was this big. Now they're 8, and Ford's coming out with 10-inch screens.
Really?
Everything is just like your phone, where you would touch it to be able to control the different parts. So they are certainly changing their vehicles with the times.
Where do you see the dealership going in the future?
That's a great question. There's a lot of changes going on right now between the autonomous vehicles, the electric vehicles.
I think it's funny that back in my grandpa's clip, they talked about hybrid vehicles as the first generation of hybrid vehicles came out. And Ford actually went away from hybrids the last couple of years, but now their next generation of hybrids come out, and they'll be able to go a lot faster than the first hybrids, a lot bigger battery packs, and you'll also be able to plug them in and charge them and run on pure electric versus just having to have a gas motor run all the time.
So your family had planned for you to be in this business and take over as the next generation?
Yeah, no.
No, never happened like that. Even growing up, they never encouraged or told us not to join the
discouraged,
business. It just kind of happened that way after we both moved away.
Yeah.
So they let you kind of discover your own life and establish yourself before you, correct me if I'm wrong, before you came back into the business.
Exactly.
That is really cool.
Yeah, no, I think it was pursue your passion and do what makes you happy, and as long as you're doing what makes you happy, you'll have a good life. And I know one of my big things of coming back was just the town of Fairmont. I mean, what a great
Absolutely.
town to raise a family in.
Sure.
It's got great hospitals, great school systems. I know growing up, you just felt so safe here,
Sure.
whereas you kind of want that same safety, security for your family.
And going out and seeing another way of life really points that out to those of us that are from towns like Fairmont.
Yes.
It is amazing.
It is.
You don't know what you have until you're gone.
Absolutely.
It's probably the best thing that ever happened to us. I mean, I
Yeah.
lived in 3 different states in the South and East, and I wouldn't have wanted to raise a kid in any of those 3. I'm so grateful to be back here and raising the kids in this small community. It's
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Now, when somebody wants to learn more about your dealership, online, website, Facebook, and such?
Absolutely. You can find us at www.fairmontford.com. We're also on Facebook.
And they can like you on Facebook,
That's
follow
right.
the cars, and
That's
what's
right.
happening. Very, very
Yes, we try to keep that updated with everything new that's happening.
cool. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Congratulations on many years being in town with the dealership.
Thank
That's
you.
very cool. Now, Andy, wasn't that a great episode?
It really was, Jeff. It really
Absolutely,
was.
very
Yeah.
informative. And I want to thank you for stopping by.
Oh, my pleasure.
Absolutely. And as we share with the folks, the sponsors that made this show possible, remember, it's not just the past, but the present that tells our story.